Strangely enough, going out to skate as a beginner is a lot like planning a project. At one end of the spectrum, some people don't think about it at all and just go wing it. At the other end, some people write out and agonize over the perfect strategy. Most of us probably fall somewhere in between those two. And there's one amazing piece of project planning advice that I think we can slightly tweak to apply to skateboarding. And it's absolutely simple. However long you think it's going to take to finish a project, double it. If you think it's going to take 2 hours, plan for 4 hours. Super simple and super effective. But how do we apply this to skateboarding? Let's take an example. If you think it's going to take about 5 days to learn how to shove it, double it. And then double that. And then erase it completely. Because if there's one thing I've learned while trying to skateboard, it's that absolutely nothing takes as long as I think it's going to. This trick literally took 6 months of consistent effort, whereas this trick literally took like 5 tries. And then as far as the nose slide goes, I still can't nose slide after 3.5 years of skateboarding and probably 3 years since I started trying this trick. Not a single trick has lived up to my most optimistic expectations or even my most pessimistic expectations. I'm just simply always wrong. And I cannot tell you how many times I have been humbled by a trick that has pretty much drop kicked me in my ego. Which is why today I want to talk about expectations from my little box. And that's because our expectations often dictate how we feel about something. To generalize, people normally like things that reach or exceed their expectations, and they often dislike something that does not reach their expectations and falls short. To speak for myself, whenever I put expectations on my progress, I'm always disappointed. If I think a trick should be relatively easy and that I should be able to land it within a few sessions, I'm always incredibly frustrated and disappointed if I'm still trying that trick 6 months later and maybe only a couple % closer to landing it. And I do think that online skate culture contributes a lot to these expectations. Think about how many videos you've seen with titles like 3 easy ledge tricks or 5 tricks that you can learn today. And I'm willing to bet that the majority of new skaters who watch a video like that and actually go out to try the tricks do not learn those tricks in one day. At least not without the right circumstances. Things like the confidence, the athleticism, pre-existing board control if they've already learned other tricks, unlimited session time maybe if you can actually try for 5 hours in one session, maybe help from other skaters, or a little bit of simple good luck, because there's lots of tricks that I've landed completely by accident. Like recently with this rail flip back to rail. That was just an accident. A happy one, but an accident, and should not therefore set up my expectations for me to think, oh, I can do this trick now. I cannot. That was an accident. Oh, and I actually I love using the slappy nose slide as my perfect example of this. I started trying the slappy nose slide maybe 4 months into skating. After all, every video calls it the easiest ledge trick, a trick that you can learn in one session, a matter of committing or going fast enough. And I was really into it in the beginning. I'd spend an hour or so every time I went to this park to do these, partially because it was pretty much the only thing I felt comfortable trying at this particular park, as the design here was quite intimidating to me and I had no idea how to skate the rest of it. But even after I moved down to Virginia around 2 years ago, I was still going for this and incredibly disappointed in myself for not being able to learn it. I had been trying it for a year even back then, and while I wasn't doing it every single weekend, I had poured hours into practicing this at this point with literally no improvement. Even an accidental slide was only about an inch, and it only happened a few times during the whole 3 years since I first tried this trick. And it's where it stayed. And I got more slides on these 50-50 grinds than I did on the nose slide attempts, and I have tried way fewer of them. And so for a long time, I didn't want to try this trick anymore. After all, at this point, I could already kickflip, but I couldn't do this super easy, learn in one day ledge trick. Slappy ledge trick at that. And so I lost all interest in them. and I think this happens with other beginner tricks as well. I think we call these tricks super easy because one, it makes for a really good title on YouTube, and two, because the tricks are easy in comparison to the other tricks out there in skateboarding. The shove it is indeed easy to me now. I can say that the shove it is an easy trick for me where I am now. And so I might go up to a skater really lovingly and tell them, hey, this trick is easy, I know you can do it, in order to encourage them. And it might. But to others, saying something like, hey, you know, this trick is kind of difficult, it's not that easy, but you can definitely do it, might actually be more encouraging. And I tend to favor that side, exactly because of what I'm talking about, which is expectations. I don't want anyone to expect a trick to be easy and to expect it to come really quickly, where it might. For some people it will, but for others it won't. So I think it's better to kind of tamper those expectations and let people know that, you know, this is kind of difficult, but you can definitely do it. And I 100% believe that. And so due to this, and I'm sure other factors, I feel that right from the beginning of skateboarding, my expectations of what beginner tricks were quite skewed from reality. What I learned later is that these foundational tricks, these beginner tricks and skills, they're not easy. They're simple, but they're not easy. And this is important to me because I think that there are a lot of beginner skaters who quit or feel bad about their progress because they expect beginner tricks to be easy or they expect progress to be fast and are very disappointed or frustrated by the reality. And when your expectations are crushed like that, it can also absolutely kill your motivation. But this is just my opinion based on my own observations. Some people might hear that and think that it's a bummer, but I actually think it's quite the opposite. Skateboarding is difficult, but I think the difficulty is what makes it worthwhile. For example, think about how good it feels after you finally learn something. For example, when I finally learned the tail stop underflip back to tail stop, this moment right here just was of absolute pure joy. And I felt so good because it took me 6 months of consistent practice, almost every week, almost every session. Compared to this double varial rail flip, which I landed in the first session I really tried them in, and really almost like right away, the feelings just don't compare. I felt so much better. I felt so good after the battle compared to landing it right off of the bat. And that's what it is, that's kind of part of the magic of skateboarding, just how difficult it is. So let's finally break out the advice that I promised in the title of this video. These are 3 things that I do that might help you as well. The advice that I wish I heard when I was a beginner skateboarder. 1, I am much more realistic. When I hear something is easy, I take it with some healthy skepticism. Maybe it was easy for them, but what makes something easy for one person doesn't make it easy for everyone. There are too many variables. Maybe under different circumstances, it would be easy for me too. For example, it was way easier to land a heel flip 2 years after learning how to kickflip. And that's because I have very different circumstances now, where I could try heel flips for a whole session and not land them 2 years ago. The circumstances are different and they matter. And particularly when I'm watching tutorials online, I try to remember that video titles are designed to catch attention. After all, who wouldn't want a cheat code to learning a new trick? And their secret hack to doing this trick is probably a very simple concept. But once again, being simple does not make it easy. There is a difference there. 2, I only set goals that I can control. I cannot set a goal to master kickflips in a month or land a tray flip in October. That is out of my control. But I can set goals to skate for an hour on Saturday mornings when the weather is nice. I can set a goal to practice kickflips for 15 minutes every session. I can work on parts of the trick. I can work on other basic tricks I know to help boost my board control in general. And that's where I set goals. And 3, I try not to compare my skateboarding progress to anybody else. We are all skating in different circumstances. We have different bodies, different access to skate spots, different outside commitments, different skate schedules, different natural tendencies towards fear or anxiety, which means our progress is going to look different. We are all going to take different lengths of time to land that first trick, then to get comfortable with that trick, and then to eventually become consistent with that trick. But that path does take years for the majority of skaters. After about 3.5 years of skateboarding, there's probably only a handful of tricks that I would consider myself actually consistent with, and I'm okay with that because I still plan on skateboarding for the next 10 plus years, you know, literally until I can't anymore. But that's just what I try to do. At the end of the day, I try to remove some of these heavy expectations that I've been putting on my skateboarding progress, either consciously or subconsciously. And I don't always succeed. They're, like I said, the expectations are natural and they sneak back in. They end up ruining my sessions. But I can say that it's worth the effort because I think I've saved myself a lot of emotional distress by even being able to do this part of the time, which is why I wanted to make this video, because I do think that it's worth the effort, and I do hope that you're having a good day. Ow. This took way too long.